Hey there, welcome back to Road With It, your BJJ and Travel podcast brought to you by Sina Metu. This is Eva, and today's special guest is my very good friend Charley, and we have been talking about moving to new cities. But before we get into that, what I like to talk about is a little bit of her background. She's a really weirdly interesting person, and I've told you this before, Charley. Like every time we talk, you surprise me. Like you tell me something like, I'm pretty sure you have told me this before, but it still sounds pretty cool every time I hear it. So I want to hear a little bit about your background. What do you do? Where have you been? Where are you headed? What are your dreams? No, I'm just kidding. But you get let's get with it. Let's talk.
Cool. Well, hi everyone. I'm very new to the podcast world, and that was a very flattering introduction. Thank you very much. I don't think anybody's quite introduced me that way before.
Well, let's be fair. You're not new to the podcast world. In fact, one of the first things you told me was, "Are you really starting a podcast? Like what?"
Oh yeah.
So my purpose now in life is to convert you into a total podcast fanatic. Hopefully.
Yeah, well, I did actually. I was listening to a couple of podcasts last night whilst I was wrapping up some presents for Christmas.
Hey, you see?
So yeah, you've started making a convert, but I'm not there yet.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, you were asking about my background and what I do, because I guess there'll be a lot of people listening to your podcast who have no idea who I am. So I'm Charley. I currently live in Manchester, UK, but I've done quite a bit of traveling around. I was born and raised in the Midlands in the UK, in a little village called Rothley, which is a very small village, lots of countryside, super peaceful, really, really nice place to grow up. And I spent the first 18 years of my life in this little village. It's very close to, it's in between Leicester and Nottingham. Most people tend to know about Nottingham, Robin Hood, all of that. So if anybody's confused, just think I'm from Nottingham.
I'm still confused.
And then
I'm kidding.
So if you threw a dart at the middle of the country, right in the middle of the UK, that is where I was born and raised.
Awesome.
Completely landlocked. And then I went to university when I was 18 years old, as did all of my friends. And I chose to go to university in Exeter, which is down in the southwest of the country. Really, really nice. It is officially a city. It's kind of a town. Again, it's not very big. It was a nice little step up from the village where I grew up. Really student focused, super safe. You had the beach really close to you, so it was nice to be down by some water. And I went to Exeter University and I studied politics, philosophy and economics, which is a bit of a mouthful to say. Whilst I was down there, I also picked up Mandarin. Oh, I've missed a bit. I realised I missed a bit. I spent, in between leaving school and going to university, I spent a month in Senegal, West Africa, which was very interesting. I went out there to try and improve my French because it's a French-speaking country. But when I arrived, everyone was speaking this really weird language I'd never heard before called Wolof, which is an African dialect. And I was told, yeah, you could speak French and you can get by and it's fine. But if you really want to experience what life is like here, you need to learn Wolof. So I was like, right, crack on, like let's learn some of this language. It was totally weird language, not like anything that I had learned before, French, Spanish, etc. And I loved it. Loved learning the new language, completely different culture. It was all around really great experience. So when I got to Exeter, I really wanted to continue learning a different language, one that wasn't Latin based, and so I picked up Mandarin alongside my degree. And that led me to spending a year in Shanghai studying a course in business management at Tongji University in the north of Shanghai, which was a heck of an experience. And we can probably get into that later. Then I got back to Exeter. I finished off my degree and then I moved to Manchester. And I've been in Manchester working as a technology consultant for higher education for the last 3 years. But 2019, I'm taking a sabbatical and I'm moving to Rome for the year where I'm studying a master's in big data management. So I've got quite an exciting year coming up ahead. I'm hoping to do a bit of traveling as well at the same time. But this is how we got talking about moving around and what it's like to move around and how to establish yourself in a new city.
The reason, usually, I'll chime in and I'll talk a little bit while people are introducing themselves because I am a very rude person and I don't let people finish. But I couldn't.
That's okay. I will just ramble on if you let me.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt your introduction because this is what I mean by every time you talk to this woman, you will find, and by this woman, I'm talking about you, in case you got lost, Charlie. But
okay.
It's like you always show up and like say, oh yeah, by the way, I didn't know you knew Mandarin. I mean, I know you've been trying to learn Italian now, and I've been sending you, random words for you to keep in mind. But it's like, Mandarin? Really? Woman? You could have said that. Okay, that should have come up at some point. But anyway, and then, you're awesome. But
oh my God, thank you.
This is why
I'm blushing.
This is why I wanted for you to finish talking about your background and all the stuff you've done, because I feel like you have obtained a lot of this because you have an open mind about moving. You don't stay in one place. Obviously, hello, but so because you were willing to move, you not only do you get to travel, but you got to learn two different, a different language, a different dialect, and all those things just add to you, you know what I mean? You become a very cultured person, and not just a cultured person, but I feel like the more you learn from other cultures and not just learn from them, but live there and experience their livelihoods, you get to grow to be a more compassionate person,
Totally.
So
yeah.
I just had a great conversation about this with Anna, BJJ Black Belt, and we were talking about how she takes her kids to all these different countries with her on her travels because she wants them to see how other people live, whether it's good or bad or whatever, but she just wants them to experience the culture. And
I think that's super important.
Right. And the first thing that came to me was, that's how you get people to learn empathy. That's how you get to learn. People get to learn, or, that's how anybody gets to learn understanding. You can't sit in your, in your big high tower New York City apartment and think, what somebody in South Africa is living just because you saw it on the Discovery Channel.
Yeah, of course. Like, to go and actually live somewhere, you really do get an appreciation for what the culture is actually like. And I know that I was very surprised, particularly when I moved to Shanghai. I really had to learn to accept that there were some elements of the culture which me, as a born and raised Brit, I approach some situations differently to how people born and raised in Shanghai do. And I really had to learn that differences in culture are not good or bad. They are just different. So whereas in the UK, if you bump into someone, you're like, oh, excuse me, so sorry, terribly sorry to have done that. There's overemphasis on being really polite. In Shanghai, it was very much, you bumped into someone, you just kept walking. If you wanted to get the waiter's attention in the restaurant, you had to shout at them across the restaurant. And for me, that was incredibly uncomfortable. Like, when I'm in a restaurant in the UK and I want to get the waiter's attention, you look at them, you might do a little nod of the head, like, oh, can you come over, take our orders? But in Shanghai, you've got to shout across the restaurant because they're just not paying any attention to you. And it's not that that's better or worse than the culture in the UK, it's just different. And I think you learn a lot about yourself, you learn a lot about other cultures, but that level of acceptance, I think you don't experience unless you live somewhere completely outside of your comfort zone.
Correct. Right. So let me ask you the first question, which I think we've already kind of
Okay.
answered, but why move? You say you grew up in a beautiful countryside, which sounds dreamy to me. Why move?
So for me, it's definitely been driven from my parents, particularly my dad. When my dad was in his 20s, he got a phone call to say, "Oh, Chris, you're a single bachelor. Can you go be our guy in Nigeria?" He was an engineer. He worked on power stations, and he was like, "Yeah, sure." Um, Went home, looked it up on a map, got on a plane for the first time in his life, and moved to Nigeria, which was a big thing. And then he spent the whole of his 20s and early 30s working in Nigeria, Northern Africa, the Middle East. He was in Dubai before it was Dubai. Um,
Wow.
and he just had the most amazing experiences, and the stories that he tells are absolutely fantastic. And I've heard them all a dozen times over, but they're just as captivating because it's so interesting to hear about a completely different culture, a different lifestyle, all of the difficulties that you face being a foreigner in a country. I remember him saying that if they got a call at the office when he was working in Nigeria, he got a call saying that they've got a shipment coming in of gin, Bombay Sapphire gin. That'd be it. He'd drop the phone, he'd walk out the office, and he'd go to wherever it was being delivered. Very different lifestyle, and that really inspired me when I was younger. And I was very much raised with this mentality of you go out and explore the world because the world has so much to offer. And to be honest, I'm always chasing stories.
That's amazing.
That's a big motivation behind why I move around, because you come back with some really cool stories to tell. Yeah.
And you are a pretty good storyteller. So you are about to move to a big city. It's a busy
Yes.
city.
Yes.
And I mean, I think I got to visit Rome maybe about 4 times while I was there. And I've shared with you how I'm a very much small town kind of girl, and big cities don't appeal to me. But somehow I ended up making it to like some of the busiest cities in Europe multiple times that I was like, why am I doing here again? But there were circumstances that kept taking me back there, whether it was training or traveling or taking somebody,
Yeah, yeah.
that was
I mean,
visiting me.
The thing about big cities, there's a lot of people and a lot of things to do, so you naturally get drawn towards them.
Well, I feel like I was always pushed to it. Like, oh, there's a really good training place I need to go check out. Okay, fine, I'll go. Or my sister's visiting and really wants to go to Paris. All right, I'll take her there. Or Rome. Oh, my cousin's now visiting and he really wants to go to those two places. All right, fine, I'll take you there. And I was like, can we go somewhere else? Can I take you to this tiny little town called Rudesheim? It's on the Rhine River and it's super cute. And you can literally, for me, it's like I would spend an entire day there. And
oh, heaven.
by the way, I visited there multiple times because it's so cute, such a cute little town. And they would go and they'd be like, oh yeah, this is cute, this is what I imagine all of Germany looking like. I'm like, well, yeah, that's why I brought you here. And they're like, all right, so what time do we leave to Paris? And I'm like, like, come on. But
yeah,
anyway.
I'm totally with you on that. Totally with you. Like, big cities, like I moved to Shanghai. That is 24 million people. And I have spent the majority of my life in a little village of maybe not even 2,400 people. That was a big shock to the system. And I always say to people when they're looking to travel to China now, I'm like, yeah, spend a few days in Shanghai, spend a few days in Beijing, but get out to the countryside, go and stay in these little villages, go and explore the rural areas because it's so beautiful and the people are so friendly. I think big cities, everyone can get a bit rushed and frantic. get out to the countryside. China is a beautiful country. There's so much diversity. We often just get stuck on big cities. Get out to the countryside.
Yeah. So now that you've been to, you grew up in a small town, or you call it small town, a small city,
Village. Village life.
Okay, village, and big cities.
All the gossip happens like around the church and the pub, like small village. It's great.
Did you hear about that Charley girl? Oh my God.
I go, and it's almost like playing bingo. It's like there's oh, haven't you grown? And there's, oh, you look so much like your mom. And just every time we go down to the village, the pub, or the church, it's always like the same comments. Yeah, it's like playing bingo.
So, do you make an effort to learn? I'm gonna jump right back into something that.
Oh yeah, keep us on track. Keep us on track.
Well, because I'm horrible. Like Rob will tell you, he's always having to drag me back. Back into, okay, we're on a time schedule here, which we're not. But
oh, okay. Is that my job? Is that my job? Because I was not aware of that.
I thought I told you in that nifty little contract I sent you. No, I'm kidding. Do you tend to learn languages to every new place you go to, especially if you're going to be living there, prior, during, or you just make it by?
Bit of a combination. I try to learn some of the language before I go. Inevitably, I end up there and I realize that what I've learned is completely wrong, and that I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, and my grammar's all messed up. And then when I'm there, it's almost like I relearn. And I think, to be honest, you can get around most countries, most languages, with probably about 10 phrases. People generally want to know, like, oh, what's your name? Where are you from? Why are you here? How long have you been here? How long will you be here for? And, for your own benefit, you want to be able to say, oh, could I order this plate of food? Please take me to this location. Yeah, like a beer, please, like in every language. There's probably about 10 or so phrases which are really easy to pick up in so many languages that you will get by just on those. And then I think in order to really get fluent in a language, though I don't think I've ever really been fluent in anything other than English, I think you do need to be there. I don't think you can become fluent in a language until you've actually lived there.
Yeah, especially for pronunciations in the proper way to use it, You don't want to go somewhere and sound super proper because that's what you learned out of a book. Then I don't know. I don't know. That's me. That's me, though. I don't like me. I'm not proper. But how do you make new friends?
Because I know. Well, sorry, I know you're super good at languages. Like, I've been really impressed by the way that, like, oh yeah, I'm just learning Italian, and you're like, yeah, I know all of these languages. Like, I find it so difficult to pick up a language when I'm not in the country or where it's being spoken.
I think for me, it was always just so much easier because I grew up listening to two languages already, and luckily for me, one of those is a, derivative of Latin.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it easy to learn other Latin languages, There's always, every time somebody new comes into, especially with my sister and myself, we tend to be very good with different languages, and people will be like, how did you know that? We're like, because it's like pretty much comes from Latin.
Latin,
You know what I mean? Like, it's Latin.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why we know what we're saying and reading and listening to. But yeah, I mean.
Anyway, you were saying you had your next question lined up.
Yeah. How do you make new friends?
I'm a very unsociable person. I don't make friends. I just go and exist in a city by myself.
Right.
Right. I'm joking. Obviously.
Well, because you and I have had the privilege of moving to new places. I had the privilege of moving, Texas girl, not born, but completely raised. I legit have my cowboy are cowgirl boots in my closet right now, which make no sense for me to have them because I'm in Korea, right? Actually,
but where you go, they go.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I was actually at the gas station, like a day or two ago, and I saw this guy wearing cowboy boots, and I'm like, "Hey, do you happen to be from Texas?" And he's like, "Yes." And I'm like, "I knew it! Like only a Texas person will wear their cowboy boots,
like I love
all
that.
the time,
I love that.
So it was,
I love when you're overseas, and then you're like, that person is totally where I'm from.
right,
Totally where I'm from. Like when I was in Senegal, I was in Saint Louis, which is kind of in the north of Senegal, and like there weren't many white people. I stuck out like a sore thumb, and like it's awesome. It's cool. Like you're really immersed in the culture. I was doing a homestay and I was volunteering at a local community center. But I remember, like, I would just know all of the white people in the city because we'd walk past each other in the street, and we'd walk past each other, kind of look each other up and down, and then stop and be like, "Do you speak English?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, you too." And it's like, "Oh, hey, like you're not from around here either." Yeah, and you just like, obviously we're not from around here, but you'd end up just sort of being like, I think we've got something in common, even if it's just the language.
Right. So for that reason, to me, it's like finding friends. I don't know. I don't think I'm awkward. I think when I'm out of my house, it's usually because I have to do something. So I'm focused. So unless I make an effort to make sure I'm not being overly focused on something, then people feel like they can't approach me. And I've heard this a gazillion times. Like even at camps, people have told me like, "You just looked mean." I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Your face."
Oh no.
I'm like, "My face? What's wrong with my face?"
Like resting bitch face.
Right. And
God.
they're like, "Well, I don't want to." I'm pretty sure that's the right terms they wanted to use, but they would just say, "You just look focused." And I'm like, "Oh, I am. I'm trying. I'm going to like 10 classes a day. Each one's an hour, and they're all teaching different stuff. Like they're not building upon each other. So yes, of course I'm focused. You know what I mean?"
Gross. Why are you doing 10 sessions a day? That's exhausting.
Well, because
wait, hang on. We haven't said how we know each other. Like I've just popped up on your podcast, and people are probably going to be like, how has this happened? Where do you find her? Like drag her off the street? Because I do jiu-jitsu too, and like this is how we know each other, and I haven't mentioned that before.
Oh well, I mean, there you go. That's one more thing to add to your awesome record of resume. She also does jiu-jitsu, ladies and gentlemen.
Very badly, not half as good as you do. This is great. This is great. We're just like boosting each other's confidence here. This is lovely. We should do this more.
Well, this is what people around the world should be doing. If people around the world did this, everybody would be walking around with smiles and just feeling good, and they would be, powerful because they would be confident. But yes, so we met we crossed paths at the Zen camp.
Apparently so. Yeah, you're another mystery character that I never actually met at the Zen camp. I don't know who I was speaking to. Like, what was I doing?
I feel like
I met loads of cool people, but I didn't meet you.
Well, you know what? To be fair, I connected with like a handful of people, and then those are the ones I pretty much stuck with for the entire duration of the camp. I know there was a bunch of other people I really wanted to talk to, but like when you kind of click with somebody, especially that specific camp is so, I don't know, I felt that that's my favorite camp just because I got to really connect with people and I got to learn some really good stuff from, I guess, more seasoned people than me, not to say. So it was, I guess that's the reason we didn't cross paths. I was kind of
maybe
keeping it,
I
was keeping short.
But then we had the magical moment when our eyes met across, what was the name of that bar?
Oh.
Lebowski bar?
Oh, you really want to bring it up.
Lebowski's, right? And then like in Reykjavik in Iceland, and it was like, hey, she seems cool. I'm going to go talk to her. And that is how we met.
to be fair, I don't think that's what came through your mind. I think, if I recall,
Oh.
somebody dragged you over and said, "Hey, this is this weird girl named Eva, and you need to meet her." And you're like, "Oh, hi." I think that's what truly happened. I seriously think that's
you
what.
got a better memory than I do. Like,
Well, I wasn't drunk.
Neither was I. I just have a really bad memory. Either way, that is how we met, and we are still friends. What, 6 months later?
I don't know. I'm not. 6 months later, 3
months.
days and 24 minutes. I don't know.
Oh, you've been
No.
counting. That's why you remember it so clearly.
So anyway, Charley.
So yeah, anyway.
How do you make new friends in new cities?
Oh God, it's so hard. It's hard. I feel when you go to university, it's dead easy. Everyone's in the same boat. You're like, oh, this university thing, like, and parties and Freshers Week, and you're out having a good time. It's quite easy to make friends. But then I think as soon as you're thrown into a city that you're not studying in, or is foreign to where you're from, I think it is challenging, and it's still something that I'm learning to do. I think one of the things that I've learned is, if you want to be friends with someone, I think you need to be a little bit persistent. Like, I really appreciate the people in my life who have been persistent enough with me to be like, actually, no, like, we get on, we need to be friends. And they text me, and like, I recognize when they're generally the people who text me first, or pick up the phone and call me. And I really appreciate that. And I realize that's not something that I do enough of. And it's something that I need to make more of an effort with, particularly when I move to Rome. If I meet someone and I'm like, oh, hey, we get on, like, let's hang out, I need to be a little bit more proactive and being like, hey, do you want to go grab a coffee one day? Do you want to chat? So I think that little bit of being persistent is super key when you move to a new city, because it's so easy to be a bit overwhelmed and to kind of just give up.
Well, that's interesting, because I, on the other hand, I've done my entire degree online, so I never really had the uni experience of meeting people within my same, like, I don't know, same realm or something.
Yeah.
But what I have used is jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
So,
and that is a really useful tool in meeting people in a new place.
And then the other thing, which, pay attention, is you kind of have to be assertive with people. But that's just me. That's how I am. Like, if I'm genuinely interested in talking to you and being friends with you, I will become a little bit more assertive and be like, hey, do you want to go get coffee tomorrow at this time? Or if you're free at any point tomorrow. Because otherwise people feel like, oh, she just said that because she's trying to be nice, but at some point or someday is a nice way of saying, like, I'm going to say this, but I don't really want to invite you, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I hadn't considered that.
And, to be fair, a lot of the times people will say, oh, I can't tomorrow, but maybe the next day. So, you just find time. Then from there, you go to actually setting up a time to go do it, But yeah, think about that.
Yeah. That is a good point. And I think you raise a really good point of using jiu-jitsu and your hobbies. It doesn't necessarily have to be jiu-jitsu. I do a lot of yoga as well, and I found that's also a really good way to meet people. But I think the difficulty comes in, you've got these great people that you train with, and you get on with them. You get on with them on the mat, and you might have a little chat in the changing rooms or whatever. But actually then converting that on-mat friendship to someone that you hang out with outside the gym as well, because I'm not at the gym 24/7. There are going to be times where I'm like, hey, I just want to hang out. I don't want to go roll. I just want to go grab a drink, go grab a coffee. I want to try out this new restaurant. I don't want to sit there by myself. Just converting, you can meet people doing jiu-jitsu, doing yoga, doing sports, doing whatever your hobby is. I think that difficulty with converting that friend to like an outside of the gym friend, I think that's where possibly the assertiveness and being persistent, I think that's definitely an area that I need to work on.
I kind of feel like you're talking about like the weirdos in jiu-jitsu, that you're like, how do I take this amateur, this animal, into the real world? That's kind of how it sounds. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, I totally understand. Yeah, I don't know. I think once people get to know me and I get to know them, for me it becomes very easy to just hang out with people, like invite them out. I'm usually the one that be like, "Hey, we're going out." They're like, "Why work?" I'm like,
yeah,
well, that's fine.
That's cool.
We can go after your work, you know?
Yeah, I like it when there's a pub or a bar or a coffee shop nearby to where you train. So like after training on a Saturday morning, you can be like, "Hey, does anybody fancy getting lunch now?" Like, and if people are free, you can just be like, "Oh yeah, we'll just go around the corner." I think that's always nice, but a little bit ambitious. You can't be choosing which gym you go to based on its proximity to a pub.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe maybe it's actually a really good way to be choosing a gym. Anyway.
Well, and that brings us to our next couple of questions. Like, how do you find a new gym, and what do you look for
Wasn't that
in a
just
new
the
gym?
perfect segue? That was almost like I planned it. That was such a good segue.
Did you plan it? Did you plan it?
I did not plan it. I did not. No. You told me to have the notes ready, and I don't.
You don't? Yeah, I figured you didn't. People never do. People never do. That's why they let me ramble on, like now, But
okay. Back to the plan.
How do you find a new gym, and what do you look for in a new gym, besides hoping
proximity to a pub?
Right.
Yeah. When I look for a new gym, I think because I only started doing martial arts I started doing martial arts when I was about 10 years old, but I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu initially at the tail end of my time in Exeter. So I did Japanese Jiu-Jitsu when I was in Exeter, and then when I knew I'd be moving up to Manchester, I was like, time for something new. So I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was just in the gym that I did Japanese Jiu-Jitsu in. And then when I moved to Manchester, I think I just found one gym on Google, and I was like, this is it. This is the gym that I'm going to go to. And in all fairness, it was it was within walking distance from my workplace. It was within walking distance of where I lived. So that it really suited me in terms of its location. And I trained there for about 2 years. But I think in hindsight, it would have been really beneficial for me to have explored a little bit more, because now I know a lot more about the other gyms that are in Manchester. And there's also some really great training in other areas of Manchester as well. And for the sake of getting on a bus on a Saturday, Sunday morning and doing that little bit extra travel, you can train with some really high level black belts and people who add different things to your game, and also meet the wider jiu-jitsu community as well. Mm-hmm. And I think every gym has its own culture, its own mindset, its own way that it approaches training. So some gyms might be more sort of family friendly. They might have kids classes, and I think that tends to change the overall atmosphere of the gym when they offer kids classes. It's a little bit more family orientated. And then you go to some gyms where they almost kind of like lock you in, and they're like, right, we're just going to train really, really hard. We're going to go for worlds, and you're going to be going for that gold medal, and you're not allowed to train anywhere else. And I think there's such a variety that I wish I'd explored that earlier on when I moved to Manchester, because now I'm discovering all of these new places, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I'd been able to take advantage of this sooner. And not only would I have learned so much more from so many different people, I think I would have also met so many different people as well. And I think the more people that you meet, the more chance you have of connecting with people, and finding those people who are like super key in your life. And I think variety is good. I think it's good to have that. So I in future, I will not just go to the first gym that I find and think, okay, this is it. This is where I'm training jiu-jitsu. This is where I'm going to meet my friends. Like, this is it. I'm going to embrace that variety earlier on, and really find where I feel at home most.
Yeah, you see, like that's a big difference between us, and I think it has a lot to do with why we're moving. You know, usually my moving is for like many reasons. So my priority is always, like, even if I'm moving for a job, my priority is always jiu-jitsu. So even now, when I moved from Germany back to America, it was I had this one gym in mind, and it kind of ties into your first story with your first gym. I had this one gym in mind that, you know, on paper they're the best. You know, they have some of the best outcomes with their training, based on, you know, word by mouth is the same thing. So I was almost set on I was going to go train there. Mm-hmm. And then I met somebody in the Iceland camp who I told this to, and they're like, come check this gym out first. Like, come check us out too. And I was like, all right, I'll go. And for me, like, I've been telling multiple for some reason this whole week, multiple people have been telling me, like, when are you visiting? When are you blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all I need is an invite. Like, if there's something you need to know about me, is the moment you tell me, hey, you should come out in April, I'll be like, okay, I'm there. And I'll show up. But all I need is for you to tell me, hey, come down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I told him, like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And that's one of the first things I did when I arrived back in America. I mean, I hadn't even unpacked. I had my gi out, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go check out this gym that I'm almost dead set on that I'm going to go train at. I went, and then realized once I walked through the doors, I was like, this is not what I've been told.
This isn't for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was immediate. Like, I did a couple classes just because I'm also that type of person that feel like I kind of have to still show up. But then as soon as my trial time was done, you know, I was like, yeah, no, this is not going to work out for me. Went to the other place, and I was like, holy crap. Like, this is where I belong. This is where I want to be at. So, it sucks that I'm traveling. It doesn't suck that I'm traveling, but it sucks that I can't be training there full time just yet. But now that I'm going back again, it's kind of, that's my priority. I found the gym, so now it's like, what's the best place I can find around it? Like, I want to be near the gym, so I'm always at the gym pretty much. So yeah, I don't look for a home. I look for the gym first. That's weird, isn't it?
I think most people outside of the jiu-jitsu community would probably find it weird, but I think everyone within it, and probably most people listening to the podcast, are like, no, that's totally the logical thing to do. Although someone who doesn't do jiu-jitsu once said to me that it's better to live near where your hobbies are than where your work is, because you're always going to have to go to work. Like, if it's a long commute, you're always going to go to work. But if it's a long commute to get to where your hobbies are, chances are you're just going to stop doing them because of the effort it takes to get there. Whereas if you live close to your hobbies, in this case, your gym, you're going to get there because it's easy.
Right. I mean, so that makes perfect sense. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good piece of advice.
Those are wise words. That was deep. That was very deep. I think we should take some time to reflect on it in time. So, okay.
Next question. Go.
Right. Have you found it any different, or any, I don't know, special insight on being the new girl at the gym? How has it been for you being the new girl at the gym?
As in when it compared to me being the new boy at the gym.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, not having experience.
I think you could tell Like when you show up and then maybe months later some new lad, as you guys call him,
Lad,
lad.
lads.
Okay, yeah. When the guys show up, and then you kind of see like, oh hey, okay, that was different, or
Yeah,
maybe not. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, like I say, like not having experienced what it's like to be a new guy showing up to the gym, I can't really make any assumptions about whether it's easier or harder for a new guy, because I think guys face their own challenges when they come to a gym. But I think coming into a gym as a woman, naturally there aren't going to be as many women on the mat, and so but I think that can be a little bit nerve-wracking, because I think when there is another woman on the mat and there are like 10 blokes and you're like, oh hey, you almost have that connection where you're like, we're a little bit fish out of water. Like, this is a very male dominated environment. It makes it quite easy to connect with other women who are there, because we all understand what it's like to walk into that really male dominated environment, and to have the confidence to walk through the doors and do that. So I think on the one hand, it makes it a little bit easier to connect with other women in the gym, because we all know that we're the minority there. We understand each other a little bit. And then in terms of getting to know other people in the gym, I think it really comes down to that atmosphere that's so often driven from the instructors at the top. If the instructors are treating everyone on the mat, regardless of gender or anything else, if they're treating everyone like an equal, you find that the members, the people who are training, will treat everybody like an equal. And that is a differentiator between gyms. I think there are some gyms which perhaps don't have that equal balance, and other gyms that really, really do. And it is different. You notice it. So I think you learn a lot about a gym walking in as a woman and recognizing how you get treated. And in most scenarios that I've experienced, it is you are treated as an equal, and that's great. Beyond that, I don't really think there's many other differences. I think if you're being treated like an equal, then just be yourself. Like, I can be a little bit silly in my training. I like to be playful and have fun, because this sport is how I blow off steam from work. I like to be a little bit silly. And if that comes across as a little bit girly, deal with it. I don't care. Like, this is me enjoying my sport, having a good time. And if that's not for you, go train with someone else.
Right. I think I just learned how to be silly with my training. Like, I think, and I see what people meant now, because I am very focused when I'm training. I don't know. Like, I can never not take it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't take myself too serious, but I do take the sport very serious. And I think that's kind of like a lingering factor from when I started. It was very traditional. And then my wrestling background was very strict, because it was with school. So it's very strict. There's no, there's no playing around. You have to train, you have to win, you have to, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I feel I enjoy it very much. That works for me. It's not stressful for me to be focused, to not have like that playful time. Until Iceland, I was training, like, I don't know, Iceland was very different too. Like, I got to train with some really different people that otherwise I would have never trained with, because of, I would see them like, okay, they're just not taking it serious or whatever, but they would be like, hey, come roll with me. And I'm like, I will never turn down a roll. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And then it was like, we were playing, it was fun, it was light, it was like, this is funny. Like, I left there feeling like, so I don't know. I mean, I don't, I haven't done it much since again, but I see what you mean. Like, if you want to have a nice, fun, hobby or whatnot, have fun with it. Be whatever
Yeah.
or whoever you
Yeah.
are with it.
And you know what? If there are people in the gym, and I think it cuts across gender, like there are men and women in a gym who will be like, no, I only want to go for gold at Worlds, and that is my focus, and that is what I'm working on. And you go, cool, great for you, have a good time. I'm gonna go roll over here with this person who's like, let's just have fun with it. Let's practice some of the stuff we've learned and try to throw it together in a weird and wonderful way.
You know, and that was happening with me last year because I was getting ready for the biggest tournament of my jiu-jitsu career yet, you know. So because I didn't have a home gym or I didn't have I was teaching back at home. So anytime I would leave, it was so that I could get training from other people, higher rankings, get advice and such. So when I was there, I was like, I have to take advantage of this time because when I go back, it's back to teaching, And I would always see my actual training take a fall. It would hurt because I was so focused on teaching. And a lot of the students were wanting to compete right beside me as well. So it was, after all, I did sign up to teach, so I have to put them first.
Yeah.
But when I was at camps or seminars and such, like that's my time, and I had to focus. So then once all that was done and I got through that goal and did what I had to do, the following camps and seminars, I did notice that I was a lot more relaxed and a lot less serious about it. Not in a disrespectful way, but just in a way where I got to actually meet some of these people that were also training and also learning the same thing I was learning,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So
long as we understand each other, the next time we roll, let's have some fun.
Right. Did we roll? Did we roll at the Iceland camp?
Must have done.
Okay.
I don't know. I was very ill as well. I was not well.
I wonder why.
No, I started off, I had the flu. Not like that, honestly. You have the worst opinion of me.
All right. Well, Charley, I've enjoyed this conversation, but now it's time for the real important stuff.
Oh, okay.
The one-line.
I don't have the notes, so I don't. Oh, excellent. The one-liners. Yes. I remember.
So, real quick.
Okay.
Fly or drive?
I have to say which one I prefer.
Yes.
Fly. Yeah, gets you further.
Chicken bag?
But drive. No, I've said fly. I'll go with it. It's fine. I'll go with fly.
You do realize they're called one-liners, right?
Oh, okay. So I just say the word. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Because, more than likely you'll be back on the show and we'll get to talk about more of these things and you'll get to really tell us why you can't choose between fly and drive, because I think that's where you were headed.
Yeah, I'm very confused now. I don't. Just go. Just next one. Just go.
All right. Do you like to check in a bag or carry on?
Carry on.
Backpack or roller suitcase?
Backpack.
Pack light or overpack?
Pack light.
What? Why? Okay, we'll keep going.
I realize that everything that I'm saying is like the opposite of what I actually do, but carry on.
Oh, no. Okay, we got to go back. We got to start again. You
What?
You can't choose the one. I need you to
I thought it was which one I prefer. I prefer a backpack and to pack light, but I always end up with a checked-in suitcase.
Yeah, me too. So, I always overpack. I'm learning how to pack light.
I'm restricting myself to one check-in suitcase to move to Rome.
Oh, I don't know how you're going to do that. It's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm letting you know it's probably not going to happen.
Okay, thanks. I'll let you know.
Let's
go next. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Research the destination you're going to, or do you just go?
Just go.
Cash or card?
Card.
Audiobooks or hard copies?
Hard copies.
Cold or hot?
Hot.
And that was referring to, do you like cold destinations or hot destinations?
Oh, hot destinations. I
Yeah.
live in the UK. I need warmth.
I figured you'd choose that one for that reason. But hey, I've really appreciate you being on the show. I've had lots of fun, and
This has been fun.
I hope you're back. I really hope you come back.
Yeah,
Well, I
I'd
mean,
love to. This has been really great.
you have to come back. We have one really cool new episode called Questions. Well, it's not questions. It's questionable drinks. That's the actual name
Yes,
of the show.
This is the idea that we had. Yeah.
Questionable drinks. But until then, thank you for being on the show. This concludes
Thank you
our
for
talk
having
for
me.
today, and look forward to it.
All right. Take care.